Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today our guest is Lee Garcia. Lee Garcia is a known entity in Harris County, Georgia. He's been here for the past 20 plus years, spent 20 years, 19 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment through multiple duty positions. He's a pillar of this community with the youth sports, and he's somebody that many people turn to if you want to send somebody for help or somebody who's going to stay in this area. You send them to Lee to get their advice and mentorship, and we're lucky to have him here. And I can't do Lee justice and telling you his bio, so I'll pass it off to him so he can introduce himself.
Hey, thank you, Yuma. Kind words. I don't see myself as a lot of that. I'm just a guy here in the community. 19 years in the Ranger Regiment. Grew up here on Fort Benning. I was fortunate enough to never leave Fort Benning. I'm one of the very few guys, especially as an intel dude, which was very, very rare, to be able to stay in the same organization, same place for 19 years, be able to retire out of the organization. But now I flipped the script. I don't do the intel. I don't do the Army stuff no more. I own a gym, and I do some team development stuff, working with sports teams and different various groups. I'm also an ordained minister, so I do weddings.
You're an ordained minister?
Yeah, I do weddings on occasion for some extra pocket change.
You do it for the taxes, for the tax write-offs here?
No. Actually, I did it because my brother-in-law was getting remarried. He asked me if I'd do the wedding, if I perform the ceremony. Yeah. And I did it. And I have a friend of mine. They run the chalets up at Pine Mountain where they do wedding venues. Yeah. I said, hey, if you need anybody, give me a shout out. I'll be happy to do it if you need someone in a pinch. And it's been once a month here up almost this year that I go out there and perform a wedding. And
that's awesome.
Be done with it. So do a little bit of everything that I never did before.
You're a jack of all trades. You learn something new about people you've known, for a while every day, every time you have a good conversation with them. So in that vein, we'll discuss some things, but this the Leading with Vulnerability podcast, the whole premise of this first installments of it is vulnerability and what that means and what it means to people, what it means to you, what you've done in the 75th, and now what you do on the outside with some of the with True Vine and all that. What's Lee Garcia's definition of vulnerability, and why is it important?
So I'll start before defining it. As I was growing up and I started becoming a leader in the organization, I was always told, never admit your mistakes, never let anybody see weakness. And I soon learned very quickly that was just wrong advice, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I always tried to make it to where my guys knew, like, hey, here's where I screwed up. Here's where I went wrong. My bad. I made the bad decision, but we're going to move on with it. So that they knew and understood it was okay to fail. And I think it's a big part of vulnerability is admitting when you're wrong and just opening up to people and telling them, like, hey, look, I don't got all the answers.
Right.
I know I'm a big, bad Ranger NCO. I'm a first sergeant, whatever else. I should beat my chest. And, when I was a private, I looked at a Ranger first sergeant as a god. They did no wrong.
Demigods, yep.
And then once I got to that point, I realized, hey, I've screwed up way too many times in my career. And as I got older and started talking to other guys, like, hey, how did you become a first sergeant? Like, hey, I know some of the crap you've done.
Yeah.
And I realized we're all flawed.
Yeah.
And to not be able to admit that to those guys was doing an injustice to them as their leader.
Right.
Because they felt that they had to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
And knowing that I had messed up and I had made mistakes, my guys were going to mess up and make mistakes, and at some point they're going to be in leadership positions. They had to understand that was okay. And we learned from it. And if I was lying to them and pretending to be perfect, they wouldn't be able to trust me.
Yep.
And if they couldn't trust me, they were going to communicate with me. And if we couldn't communicate, we couldn't build a good team.
Right.
Bottom line. And so that's a big part of what vulnerability means. It's just opening up, communicating, and allowing people to trust you.
I think you're right. It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Fail fast, fail forward, learn from it, and pick up and go on. It's when we don't admit our failures and we don't learn for it, and then we repeat it, and then our subordinates repeat it because we're too proud to admit it. So I think that's a very good definition of vulnerability. And in your time in the 75th, so did you come in pre 9/11?
I did.
So not a lot of us left. I'm a pre 9/11 guy, barely. I had 9 months. I was ahead of 9/11. So you saw what the regiment was prior to 9/11, and then what we have evolved into for the last 20 years. What's your thoughts on that?
We've gotten smarter.
Yep.
We've gotten a lot smarter, not just tactically. Not just in the way we do our jobs, we've gotten smarter as leaders. And back to the fact where we learned that, hey, it's okay to fail, and it's going to happen, and learn from it. And I think a lot of that came from mistakes we've made in combat, from seeing losses, from not always getting it right out there. When we come back, we learn those lessons and go. It's very easy to artificially win in training.
Yeah.
All the time. And I've seen it many times, and it used to irritate me. We'd be doing an exercise, and our guys wouldn't be picking up what was going down.
Right.
And the commander would be like, hey, throw the injects in there so they can pick it up. No, don't. Stop. Let them fail. That's how they're going to learn. If we can keep making it to where they're going to win, they're going to get this false sense of security. So when we go out there and do it for real life, they're not going to know how to, handle that adversity if it gets wrong.
Right.
Because as an intel guy, I always tell my guys, the information you put out is life or death.
Yeah.
Someone's going to live, someone's going to die. It's up to us to determine whether it's the bad guy or the good guy.
Yeah.
If we get it wrong, the good guy dies. If we get it right, the bad guy dies. And if you don't understand what that feels like for the good guy to die, it's not going to drive you to do the job better,
right?
To be more precise, because it's very easy to get lazy in it. It's very easy to get complacent with it.
Yeah.
So I've seen that shift in evolution where people are okay to fail. Leaders gotten smarter in that sense. Leaders are more willing to educate than just put down.
Right.
Leaders are studying more and understanding more. And we were talking before this about guys going to good programs as NCOs, like, hey, we as NCOs can do this. Nothing to bash the old guys, but we see a lot of the old guys, they're just chest beaters. We're hard, we're strong, we're going to go put our heads down and go through it.
Right.
Big evolution I've seen and change, better or worse, depending on how you want to see it, is those Rangers now, those young leaders and NCOs, like, hey, instead of breaking my head through that wall, let me figure out if I can go around it or go over it and still accomplish the same task.
Yeah.
So we've gotten a little bit smarter in that sense. Just caring, a lot more empathy, I think, has come with that learning piece of it, of our leaders. It's not that we're sympathetic. Difference between sympathy and empathy, huge difference.
Yeah.
It's not that the leaders are getting softer; they're understanding better that hey, some dude's going through something. It's not just automatic RFS. Okay, how can I retrain you to get you better? Because family issues, you're not sleeping because your girlfriend's cheating on you, or whatever it may be. Understanding the root cause of the issue, fixing that, so we can make better Rangers.
Yeah,
at
the
end
whole
of the day.
person, understanding the whole person,
and it wasn't just bad day at the range,
right?
And you're gone.
Yeah, because I mean, I didn't come from a whole lot coming in the Army. Grew up in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, and I had fortunate to have good leaders in the regiment that took me under their wing and did show empathy and sympathy when it was needed. But that doesn't mean that it was easy. It was never easy. Yeah, and you saw we stood up the RMIB, a whole nother battalion within the organization. You were critical in that. You sat in the senior enlisted advisor seat in there for 2 years.
Just about standing up.
So there's a whole other side to the 75th that a lot of people aren't aware of, especially from previous generations of how we've evolved and what we became, and more low density MOSs. We're not just the infantry guys. There's more. We support more each other, one another more than we probably did in the past. What was that like, standing up something new in an organization like ours, to where you still can keep it credible, hire the right people, and retain the right people?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot more recently, because at the time, when we were standing up or getting ready to do the provisional stand-up of the battalion, it was that morning, and I went up to Sergeant Major Bishop. He's like, how do you feel today? It's like, I ain't got time to feel nothing. Who's the guest list? Because I was still running the Regiment OS2 security portion of it, as well as getting the ceremony going done, still playing both hats. And I was like, I ain't got time to feel for nothing. I got time to enjoy this. We got to go. And when we built that battalion, we were still running a marathon.
Yeah.
We were literally building the airplane in flight, because we're still deploying. We're still doing change of commands for the company. We're still trying to figure all that stuff, as well as doing the staff portion of it. And now that I've kind of sat back and I've had time to think about it over the years, I was like, how do we do that? We had a staff at the time. It was about 6 of us consistently just working on it. And that was what the Regiment OS2 staff was.
To stand up the battalion?
To stand up the battalion.
6 of you?
Just about. There was consistent in there, because we were still rotating guys.
Yeah, the consistency.
Yeah, right, from the Regiment OS2 standpoint, the Regiment OS2 and AS2 were back and forth deployed.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that officer counterpart constantly sitting there. So it was me, a couple staff sergeants, and some lieutenants, trying to build this thing up. And it was fast, it was furious.
Yeah.
But as I sit back and look at it, it's like, Rangers can do anything.
Yeah.
You put them on task and get them going, they're going to do it.
You're right.
The amount of times we got told no from the battalion standpoint, we're like, cool, thanks, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yep.
And we did it.
Yeah.
And we had the support from the staff. We had the support from the command. So we weren't necessarily outsiders,
Right.
because we had the support. Like, hey, we want to get this done. And so seeing that evolution from as much effort as they put into the low density side, and it's always been that way. I grew up at 3rd Battalion, so I was at regiment headquarters for about 6 months. You know, they were trying to get rid of a dude, so they sent me over to 3rd Battalion. It's like, okay, we'll hide him, get rid of him, push him over there, which turned out to be a great decision,
right.
you know, for me personally. So I grew up around the infantry mindset. I grew up around those guys, deployed with them. You know, I was watching them being there, and every time we were deployed, I was attached to a company. I was never really at the headquarters. So I've been given a lot of fortunate opportunities in my life to help me see things completely different. But at the same time, being a low density guy, I always felt like an outsider in the organization.
Yeah, sure.
Even though we got to stand up the battalion, I call them my peers, quote unquote, because I was still an E8 when I did it.
Yep.
As the senior enlisted, they were all sergeant majors, guys I looked up to, and I knew across the board, but they treated me as an equal every time. Which it was one of those things like, that's awesome, they do that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, I don't deserve to be, you know, you call me your equal. And,
imposter
hey, come on, buddy.
syndrome stuff.
Yeah, it was, because I was an E8. I was the intel dude, and it's, you know, 5 battalion, you know, CSMs, or 5 CSMs, period, you know, across all the battalions, and then E8 Lee Garcia sitting there in the same room, in the same conversations with the same say-so.
Yeah.
It felt weird.
Yeah.
It felt like I did not belong, and it took a long time to accept it, that I did have that voice, and they did respect what I was saying. But at the same time, I was very appreciative that they did that.
Right.
And this goes back to that vulnerability piece. It goes back to how NCOs have learned throughout the days, and how we got smarter about things we were doing. They were willing to accept it. It wasn't like, you're that intel dude, whatever, and go sit down and color.
Yeah, I know when I first saw you, I didn't know you well back then when you were standing that up, and I just knew it resonated with me, because when I saw you standing up the battalion, all you're doing, it didn't matter what it said on your chest, right? They put trust in you because of the person. They did it on character, right? And if more people hired on character over at what their center of their chest looked like in the military, we'd probably be in a better spot. But they picked the right guy for it. You're probably still in touch with our mid folks. It's doing well. It's thriving. It's it's kind of been a beacon for the Army of a way to do things. So I couldn't have picked a better guy to do it.
I appreciate that. And I felt like I was an idiot that didn't belong doing it, but I just did it.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what you got to do, right? Move fast, fail fast, and you did a great job. But you said in there, in 3rd Battalion, all the deployments and all that, and you're a family man. That's part of the reason, or the reason probably you transitioned and didn't keep going, right? Same for me. What was it like as a family man during this time of conflict? What were the pains and the gains? And I mean, it's an emotional thing. When I think about it, I get emotional thinking about it, my kids and the time I've missed and trying to make that stuff up. What was it like for you?
So early on in the deployments, when I was younger, when we started all off, I wasn't married yet. I was engaged. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'll see you later, babe.
Yeah, sure.
We're going to go do our thing, and we come back. It's the honeymoon phase, and we're gone. And it was just us two that we had to worry about.
Yeah.
She was working. I was doing my thing. It wasn't until later on through the deployments in 2006 when my first kid was born. So we're well into it. And it changed. I never forget. So and this is where I learned a lot about the empathy piece of the leadership, too. We're in Ramadi. My wife's pregnant. It's June. And it's the thick of it, 2006.
Oh, yeah.
It's hot in Ramadi.
Yep.
And I was the intel dude. Staying awake 48 hours, sleeping about 3, and then going another 48 hours, living off ramen.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my wife one morning, and she had just come back from the doctor, and she had complications, a lot of fluid. They're like, hey, the baby might come early. We don't know what's going on, this and that. And I was sitting outside, and I just couldn't help it. It was my first kid. I didn't know what's going to happen. I'm far away. She's in pain. She's struggling. She doesn't know what's going to happen. And Ballesteros, retired CSM Ballesteros was the first sergeant at the time, and comes up and asks me what's going on, what's wrong, and I just couldn't hold it anymore. I broke down.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, it's all right, Ranger buddy. We'll get you home. We'll get you home. I was like, I can't go home.
Right, yeah.
I mean, no, when we got all this stuff going on right now, I can't go home. And so I struggled with that. And it was always kind of a struggle, like family and fight.
Yep.
And it's hard to choose.
Yeah,
I mean,
is.
It was then.
It really is.
It was then really hard to choose. Now I know what I would choose.
Yeah.
But he called back to the commander, the battalion commander. There were, another outstation, and they said, no, he's not going anywhere. He's staying here. Decision was made. He didn't approve it. He didn't like it, but hey, roger that. 3 bags full and just went out the mission. Well, Colonel Miller at the time, was the task force commander, came in that night, and Ballesteros had talked to him. And Colonel Miller came up to me and he was like, hey, I understand what you're going through. It's happened to my wife before. It's like, you're going home tonight.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, nah. I was like, appreciate it, sir. But the battalion commander, he said, no, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, don't care. You work for me here.
Yeah.
You're going home tonight. And I was on a helicopter that night, back to Balad, and on a plane the next day, headed home. And that's when I kind of learned, like, hey, leaders do care.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't matter about the fight at that point.
Yeah.
They showed me that the family was more important.
Right. And I would say that by investing in you at that moment is probably a paradigm shift for the remainder of your career.
And
right?
It was. And there's always been moments throughout my career where the regiment said, I don't care what you got going on. Go take care of the family.
Yeah.
That was really the second time that it happened. The first time was a couple years before. I was out in Koust. And I can't remember how it really came about, but I remember I got a call from some of the guys back home. I think it was Mike Lowry, LaShawn Lowry. He was back home at the time, and he was on staff duty. He called me. He's like, hey, man, your wife called. There's something going on. You need to call her. And so I went back to the server room with the S6 and found there's always a little secret phone back then. Called back, and apparently someone had been calling her and telling her, like, hey, I know you're alone, blah, 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 this and that. We've been watching the house. And so I was kind of freaked out.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I called our CI guys.
Helpless.
And I called back to Mike, and it's like, hey, can you check on her? And he's like, hey, I got the boys. We're in the car ready. He goes, like, stop.
Yeah, right.
We don't need to do any of that.
Yeah.
Just kind of.
The arms room's open.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was pretty much like, hey, we're on our way. I was like, no. We're not doing that, dude. Let's figure out what's going on. And, Rick Merritt, Sergeant Major Merritt, was the Ops Sergeant Major at the time, and Major Don Hill was the S3. And they're like, hey, you're going home. And it was like that. I was gone the next day, back home. So when my son happened, I was kind of like, okay, that was a special instance. Yeah. And my son happened, I was like, hey, happened again. And then several years later, my daughter was born with a whole bunch of issues. She ended up in the NICU she was in there for about 3 months. A month of it she was in a medically induced coma. And regiment took care of me and the family again and said, hey, go.
Yeah.
Put you on TDY. Don't care. Come back, check in every now and again, but just go take care of the family.
Oh, wow.
And so I was always grateful for that. And like the paradigm shift times, you talk about, it's like that's when it really sunk in with the empathy pieces. And hey, dudes got stuff going on in their lives.
Yeah.
Figure what that is, take care of them, and they're going to take care of the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They always had that mantra. It's like recruit the Ranger, retain the family.
Right. Yep.
And I was always became a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
And when I didn't think family was important, regiment reminded me that family was important.
And that's important, and that's something that I think kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes the organizations, you lose sight of it. Any organization lose sight of it, but that's on the leader.
Yeah, I'll go back. Yeah, it's the leader made me realize what was important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was tough.
Yeah. So in all that, how many deployments did you have at the 75th?
All in all together, 13.
13. So through those 13 deployments, what was your toughest day in uniform that you had?
A lot of tough days. A lot of and I've been thinking about this question for a
while. Yeah, it's a tough question, right?
And
how do you refine it down to one?
Yeah, and when you ask that again, just right now, when you relate it to the deployments, I think it was the first time I saw the silver caskets go through formation.
Oh, I just got chills thinking about it.
That was 01. And we weren't expecting it, because that's the initial invasion. And going to war. We're doing this, man. We've been trained for this. We're fighting for this. And the night of the jump.
Yeah.
Helicopter, hard landing.
Stone Cipher.
Edmonds Stone Cipher.
Yeah, Edmonds and Stone Cipher, yeah.
And, the jump goes down. I was flying surveillance aircraft overhead. E3, E4 at the time. And we come back and we do the ceremony. And we see those caskets come across. And it was real.
Yeah,
It was just real to everybody at that point.
this has consequence.
And I saw dudes like tearing up, and like
Yeah.
guys that I didn't think I'd ever see tear up.
Yeah.
Hard dudes. I'm just a scrawny little into dude in the back, and I
Yeah.
see my warrior brothers out there like hitting them hard. And I was like, fuck, this is real.
Yeah, yeah,
This is real. And then we shook it off and we went back to work.
yeah,
So that's the first thing that came to mind when you said that. As I've been thinking about it all, I can tell you all that every time I failed as leader.
yeah, yeah.
I think two of the other hardest times was putting the uniform on because I didn't know what else to come in and to expect.
Yeah.
And the second hardest day was taking it off
Oh, yeah, yeah,
because it's over.
yeah,
It's an unexpected ride that lasted 20 years. That was
Yeah.
only supposed to be 4,
yeah.
and it was done.
That's crazy that you say that now, because I was actually thinking earlier today when I was driving into work, I was thinking, I don't think I'm ever going to put body armor again and get on the back of a 47, and I hadn't realized it. And it kind of hit me for a minute that I'm in that transition phase there. So all that time you transition out, I fully believe that transition is a team sport. It takes guys like you and me and our families. How was the transition with you and your family and all that? How's that been? What's your lessons learned there?
It was hard, and I didn't even realize it was hard. The transition at the beginning, I thought I had it licked,
Right.
Because early on, or later on in my career, I started getting involved in the community, like you're talking about. I started coaching, I was running the football program, I was doing all this stuff. So I had transitioned all my friends from military guys to civilian, and our lifestyle had changed from military to civilian.
Right.
So we were already hanging out parties and kids and school and all that stuff. I was essentially a civilian,
Right.
outside of the work hours.
Yeah.
So that part, I thought, this is going to make it easy. This is going to be done. We were at a football game, getting set up for a football game one day, and I was sitting out there getting everything set up at the stadium, and I was like, I couldn't breathe, still feeling lightheaded. And I went back to my truck. I was like, damn, I need some water.
Yeah.
I need to eat, take a knee.
Take a knee, drink water.
Drink water,
Yeah,
move
yeah.
on. All right, got up, moved on. Following weekend happens again. I was like, Jesus, it's not that hot outside. What's going on? I'm not dehydrated. And then I was out at one of the ball fields, and I saw Raymond Castillo. And he was pedaling his little bike in his boots and blue jeans. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He was his little seated, recumbent bike.
Yeah.
And he was getting out at the same time, and we got to talking. And I don't even know why I brought up the story, and I told him about it. He's like, dude, you had a panic attack. I was like, bullshit, man. I don't panic attack. What's that? He was like, no, man, I'm serious. You had a panic attack. I had that too. I was like, no, we don't do that. In my head, mentally, it's like, we don't do that.
Right.
That's not us.
Right,
That's not
absolutely.
you.
No, yeah.
Double amputee, still jumping out of airplanes and doing stuff. You can't do that. Can't happen to you.
Yeah, right.
And he started telling me his story about the stuff that he was going through, and I was like, wow, if you can do that, and then you can admit it to me,
Yeah.
why can't I admit to myself that I'm having
Yeah.
issues? Yeah. And then I went back to work and I started talking to some other guys like, oh yeah, I've been seeing a therapist, I've been seeing a counselor. It's like, I guess it's okay to do so. And these guys I look up to.
Right.
And so I did. I went saw a counselor and saw a therapist and talked for a while, and told me, like, hey, you got separation anxiety. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm ready to get out. I'm excited about it. But at the same time, I couldn't leave and let go.
Right.
Clapping actually kicked me out at one point because we did
Oh,
transition and I was still going.
Tell the story. The cup.
So Simon Sinek, in his book Leaders Eat Last, he tells this story, and I can't do it as well as he does. But essentially, he talks about you can see it on videos about it. But essentially, it was I think he said it was Undersecretary of Defense. I went to a talk and a briefing that he talked to all the time. And he said he was sitting there talking. He looks down at a styrofoam cup in the middle of his speech. He kind of stops, and he says, last year when I was the Undersecretary of Defense, I came to the same meeting. Someone booked my flights. I flew first class. Someone was waiting for me at the airport. Took me to the hotel, brought me to this venue, put me in the back door, and they gave me a ceramic cup. He said, this year I'm no longer Undersecretary of Defense. I had to book my own flights, flew coach, had to get myself to the hotel, had to get myself to the venue. When I asked for a cup of coffee, they gave me a styrofoam cup. And he says, and I realized that ceramic cup was never meant for me.
Right.
I always only deserved the styrofoam cup. We all deserve a styrofoam cup. All the benefits we get of everything are meant for your position, not for you as the person. And so I listened to that few days prior to my change of responsibility. I had my little corner office. Everyone came to me.
Yeah.
Had it all. I was the man. Do change of responsibility. I take a week off. I come back. Clapping's in my office. I got nowhere to sit, and I realized there's my styrofoam cup over there in the corner with no computer. Just a blank, empty desk.
Yeah.
And it hit hard.
Yeah.
I was mentally prepared because I started recanting that story. Emotionally, I wasn't. And I realized, man, these guys don't need me no more. Like, how was it last week? Every problem they had, it was mine to fix.
Right.
And this week, nobody cares about me. I don't even have a computer
right.
to sit at.
Right.
And a desk to sit at. And it was a humbling experience.
Yeah, I was
it
say,
was a tough one to swallow.
What were some of the emotions? Was it anger? Were you just confusion?
Confused.
Or, yeah.
I was relieved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was confused. I was hurt. And I was still coming to work for a while until, like I said, Clapping told me, he's like, dude, go home. Don't come back. I'll tell you when I need you.
Right.
Because part of me felt like I just got a divorce.
Right, yeah.
And I was still living at the house, and the new dad was in there.
Right.
And none of the kids wanted nothing to do with me, but I just had to be there.
Right.
And that's kind of the emotions I felt. And I was like, I was like, this is my place. Why isn't it me? And so that was tough.
Yeah.
Until he told me just to go away. And I realized why, because I was trying to interfere or trying to get stuff, but then I didn't want to be committed to anything.
Absolutely.
So I did. I went away, and I would go do my transition briefs and training or whatever else, and I'd go home and I would sit. I sat on the couch. To me, it felt like 3 weeks. My wife said, dude, you were only doing nothing for a week, and you went back to moving stuff. But it felt like forever. I just sat there, and it felt like my body had given up.
Yeah.
My mind, my spirit, my body had everything just given up. And it was the first time, it was like I had nothing to do.
Right.
And I did nothing. And it was a strange, weird feeling. I wouldn't say it was quite depressing, but it was one of those things where I want to do something, but I can't.
Right, yeah.
My body would not let me move.
Right.
And I think it finally just, dude, stop.
Yeah,
first time you got to stop in a long, 20 years.
Yeah, stop.
Oh, hell, 25 years, because I started working when I was 16 years old. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
As a kid, so I'd never stopped before.
Yeah. Or said no, probably.
Yeah, that too. And so it was the first time I got to do that. And then I picked myself up, and then I got busy and started to, working on the gym.
Yeah.
And so it became a different type of busy, a different type of things to keep me occupied.
Yeah.
And it wasn't focused on other people. It was focused on what I was doing. And there was some harmony and peace in it.
Yeah.
Because Jesse Reagan would come help me sometimes, and we would just sit there and just bang on the wall. He'd be on one side, putting wall up. I'd be on the other side, putting wall up, and we wouldn't talk.
Yeah.
Because he was getting out at the same time, and it was just kind of like, man, this is nice.
That's awesome. So, with the transition, how's it been for the family? The wife, you were around more. Was it hard at first, or did you kind of get into it slowly with that last year that you were in, or how's that been? How's that transition been? You're not deploying anymore.
It was a slow transition because, like I said, the change coming. I was going to work half days, come back and until finally Clapping's like, hey, go away. So I was able to spend home. So we were able to transition into like dad's home all the time. So that was good. That was easy. I got more intentional with the time that I had to,
It's a great
which was
word.
a difference.
Great word.
It was a big difference because before, when you're on leave, you were intentional for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe. Because your mind was on like, okay, I know when I get back. So, you decompress for that first couple of days. If you're traveling or whatever you're doing, you're at the whim of somebody else. So you don't really get to be intentional with that time. And then, 3 or 4 days before leave's over, it's like getting washed clothes and packed.
Yeah.
And probably back at work, getting stuff ready to get going. So I had nothing else to do but be there with the family. So doing the coaching and hanging out with the kids and the family and, camping and going out on the boat. We were able to spend a lot more time together, which was good. I still sometimes think like, oh shit, I got TDY next week. No, I don't. I got nothing next week.
Right.
Or I'll sit there and we're trying to plan stuff out, and I still every now and again it's like, we can't do that because I don't have nothing going on. I control my own schedule.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's still taking some getting used to.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Flashbacks every now and again.
Yeah. How about for my wife? Because I've kind of I've been on a different schedule for the last year. She has trouble asking me for help. She's still getting through. I'm like, I can pick up the kids. Yeah. I can take them to school this morning. I can do this. I can do that. So how's it been with hers?
It was the same.
Yeah.
She's still kind of like, like you said, like I can't rely on you.
You rely on
it's
you,
been
yeah.
so long that you haven't been able to rely on your spouse.
Yeah.
And because I'm an idiot, it was.
You're good.
When I had the personal training studio, I was able to have a lot of time. I knew I had my set schedule. I got my classes this day, and I'm off for the rest of the day. So
Yeah.
go in at 5:30, done by 6:30. I go home, get the kids to the bus stop. We got to hang out, whatever else. I wouldn't come back in until 10 or whatever my next client or a day was. That was all great for about 2 years until I opened up the new gym, and my hours are 4:30. So I'm in there 4:30 in the morning until 6 o'clock at night.
Glutton for punishment.
I am. But at the same time, like I was to explain to you earlier, after the first month I did it. I knew it was going to suck. I told her, this is going to suck this first month. I want to meet the people. I want to know who I'm getting. And then, after the first month of just sucking it down from 4:30 to 9 o'clock at night, I hired a kid. He sits in there in the afternoon. So now I get to come home Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And now we have our lunch dates, and we get to go run our errands. And since the kids were in school, that was our time, me and her.
Oh,
connecting,
yeah, nice.
Which was really nice, Or when I did the studio before, during the day, kids are at school. I have no client. I'm off at 11. I don't got to be back till 4. We go and take naps. And just lay there in bed and just watch TV. It was just the time that we never had before.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's awesome. I want to touch back on something you said earlier. A few things. You've said emotional intelligence a few times. I know you do some stuff through TrueVine and some things with some sports teams, some leader development type stuff. I assume that helps you get at some of the, fill some of that cup, some of that leadership cup that you're missing since transition from the Army. And I know it helps those kids out and those teams out. What's that experience been like? And what's emotional intelligence to you? Like, I think it's super important. What are your thoughts on it?
So first about what we do with at there at TrueVine. That helped me a lot as part of the transition piece. Because I started picking up some of those gigs and working with some of those teams as I was transitioning out. And it gave me that purpose that I missed out on because I wasn't doing anything anymore.
Right.
'Cause, my whole career I was always working for somebody, working with somebody, doing something that meant something.
Right.
Whether it was producing an intelligence packet or, doing counseling or being a leader or building a battalion.
Right, yeah.
I had a reason to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once I got done, I had no reason to do anything.
Right.
I had no purpose. So that gave me a purpose to get back and get back. Get back and get back. And then teach all those lessons that I learned the hard way.
Right, absolutely.
And it's something that we were looking at. It's like, as I saw some of the younger kids come in, it's like, hey, you guys are missing these values.
Yeah.
And this was our way to get them before they joined the Army or went into life to work with those guys and those kids. And it was rewarding because you saw it's very easy to get disenfranchised with our youth. It's very easy to look at TikTok, look at Instagram. It's like, man, these kids are a bunch of idiots.
Right.
You look at this microcosm of the world. It's on social media, and it's like, you guys suck.
Right.
And so going into it's like teenager kids. Like, we'll do it the best we can. These guys are suck.
Yeah. Right.
And they surprise me.
Yeah.
Every single time it surprised me. Their willingness and eagerness to learn, to put in the work, the effort, and to do what they had to do to accomplish the mission. And it was good. It was refreshing to see that. As far as the emotional intelligence goes, it's a term that's been thrown around a lot and used a lot.
Yeah.
For me, I see it more as knowing yourself.
Yeah.
And understanding, like, here's what I know and here's what I don't know.
Yep.
Understanding what my own weaknesses are and how to get over them.
And knowing when to ask for help.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hardest part.
It is.
Knowing when to ask for help.
Yep.
I'm still stubborn. I still know what I need to do. There's a lot of times I don't do it.
Yeah.
Going back to being vulnerable, we talked about it. I'm still terrible at being vulnerable.
I
I
know.
preach it to these kids. I tell them all the time. We do little exercises with it. But it's still hard because it's still, whether it's from growing up and being in the organization or from when I was a kid, you don't show weakness.
Right.
You got to be tough all the time. I know that there's times not to do that.
Right.
It's still hard for me to not do it.
Right.
And I catch myself, we'll watch a movie. We were watching Invincible the other day. And I'm starting to tear up.
I do, yeah.
And I'm fighting it, and I'm holding it in. Like, I can't let my kids see it, or, it's my son watching me, and I don't want to show them that it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
But I tell them, like, hey, it's okay for you to do it.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm still working on.
Yeah. And you said it, you're still working on it. it's when you give up and quit working on it and find alternative means. Like we've all seen our brothers and sisters go to the bottle or even worse situations. But I think I agree. It's understanding yourself and who you are as a person and what drives you and what motivates you and how to fill that cup that's emotional intelligence to me, and understand it, and then when to ask for help and how to ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help, right? And that's part of the reason I'm doing this whole venture. So you've done that externally, the Harris County stuff. Like everybody knows Lee Garcia in Harris County. Everybody knows your kids in Harris County. What does it meant to you to be? You're like 20 years in one spot. That's rare in the Army terms, right? What's it like to been able to you put down roots here and known in this community? What's it mean to you?
It's what got me out.
Right.
Like I said, my daughter has issues. And so we moved out here when she was 1, and she was still on her feeding tube in her bag. We essentially had a hospital in her bedroom. I had gone on a unexpected deployment that went a little bit longer, 1 year.
Yeah, we've been on those.
Longer than expected, and I had 2 weeks notice. Went for a month, quote unquote. 6 months later, I come home, and we had just moved out here. And so my wife had got my son involved in football. And so in that time I was gone, she met a whole new group of people.
Oh, right, yeah.
So when I came back home, it was the night before the little Tiger Bowl. And they had a little pep rally. And I went to the pep rally, with my wife and the kids and all this stuff. And I had what I know for sure was a damn panic attack at that point. Because there was all these people there that I had never met, never seen.
Yeah,
they knew my wife, they knew my kid. And everyone was like, hey, what's going on, Lee? I was like, get away from me. Who are you?
Yeah.
And in that particular deployment where I was kind of isolated. I had a small little just group of people that was around, whatever. And it was very overwhelming. But I say all that to say that we grew up within that community. We grew up in that football program, just playing the sports and getting involved with all that stuff, to where my kid was exposed. Yeah. My daughter was exposed to everybody. So you say everyone knows Lee Garcia. It's more everyone knows Haley, my daughter.
Yeah, oh yeah, everybody knows Haley. Everybody knows Haley.
By then they know who we are.
Yeah.
But seeing how the community rallies around her,
it's amazing.
And how she can go anywhere, and people are going to watch out for her, know her, look after her, do whatever. And people are like, I saw Haley, so whatever. Or we'll be at a store. It's like, hey, Haley. It's like, who's that? She's like, I don't know. But everybody knows her. Kids treat her like any other kid.
Right.
And so I could not take my family away from that. I couldn't take her away from that.
Right.
I couldn't take my family away from where they were finally comfortable with somewhere and some way. Because before we lived in Phoenix City, in a military neighborhood where all our friends get moving, PCSing.
Yep.
We come out here, a lot more civilians. My wife doesn't have to see her friends move away anymore, so she finally kind of make friends. And so I couldn't take the family away from that.
Yeah.
And what I've learned at this out here is a true community.
Yeah, it is.
Like I said, people take care and look after each other.
Yeah.
In the gym, I get moms and their kids and fathers and their sons. I got 3 generations that I train in there, and I get to be involved in people's lives.
Yeah.
And they know my life. They know my kids. They know. So I couldn't take them away from that, no matter what. So
how's the gym going? What's the story behind the gym? Why'd you do that? What's the story behind that? Because
emotional intelligence.
So that's good.
So I got I was always, because growing up it's run, ruck, push-up, sit-ups, run, ruck, push-up, sit-ups every day, all day long, right? And then the regiment started transitioning where we got smarter into different types of training. So I got more into going to the gym a lot more because I always hated running. As soon as I could stop running, I stopped running.
Yeah, I'm on that boat right now.
And so I started going to the gym a lot more, but I never knew what I was doing. And I was too stubborn to ask for help. And I kept getting hurt. My back, my shoulders, everything was always hurting somewhere because I was doing everything wrong.
Right.
And so I finally got tired of it. And I started educating myself. And in the process, I randomly found this podcast, and they were talking about just different ways of training. It was 3 trainers talking about stuff. And it's more their love and passion for training. Yeah. And then I learned how to do everything differently. And so I went from trying to push to, all right, I'm going to go to my body weight, then I'm going to go to the bar, and I slowly progressed myself. And I got better. And I got stronger, and I felt better. I was like, well, holy crap. And then we're doing training with the kids, and I'm watching, God bless the fathers and stuff, but they're training the kids. We're going through conditioning. I was like, we're going to hurt these dudes.
Oh, yeah, I've been there, yeah.
We're going to hurt these kids, too. These kids can't really move right.
Right.
So I was like, all right, I'm getting close to getting out. I'll train kids. And then turned into well, before I train kids, I got other time. If I start building out the schedule, I can only do them in the afternoons.
Yeah.
So I got to start training some of our friends in my garage.
Yeah.
And then went from the garage to, like, my wife was like, hey, I don't want a bunch of random people in the house, so we need something else.
Yeah.
By chance, I found the building that we're in, and I started building it from there, and just got into it, fell in love with it. I was having fun. I was enjoying it. I was back to that mentorship purpose piece. I'm training people, and I'm working with folks, and I'm working with kids, and then I had an opportunity to buy out some guys down the road for another gym. I made an offer. They took it, so I put the new place together. And it's been awesome. I'm meeting all kinds of new people. Yeah. Still doing the training with the kids and people, and we're offering wrestling now, and it's growing faster than I expected. Yeah. But it's been a ride. It's been great.
So yeah, I don't know if we said it, but foundation training facility here in Waverly Hall. If you're in the area and need, you've heard Lee for the last hour. He's somebody you can definitely come talk to and hit it up. So we'll close this out here with the 2 questions, and I'll do it in 2 parts. The first one. So everything you did in your transition. If you're talking to somebody right now who's going to transition at 4 or 20 years, what are the 3 takeaways or the 3 pieces of advice you give them to be successful?
Wherever you're going, whether you're staying on post or staying in the area, find your Ranger buddy. It's not someone that you have to be there every single day. It's a bad day, it's Thursday, I got nothing going on. Hey, do you want to go grab lunch? Yeah. It's going to keep you grounded. It's going to keep you with that familiar person. Yep. Civilian, everyone's great, but sometimes you need that like-minded person just to kind of bullshit, tell stories with, or they're just going to understand. Like,
they just understand.
When I say a stupid joke, they get it, and they're not going to look at me funny because we understand our humor. Right. Talk to somebody. Yeah. Do some therapy and some counseling before you get out. Make that part of your transition plan. Yep. It's not a sign of weakness. You're going to learn a lot about yourself. Yeah. You're going to understand, like, hey, everything that's going on in your head and your body and your mind, it's going to happen. It's okay.
It's just like going to the gym and seeing that personal trainer.
Absolutely.
Get out of your own way and go have a professional. That's what they do. Talk to them. Yeah.
And get involved in your community.
Yeah.
I think that single-handedly is probably the biggest thing that helped me transition through. Yeah. Is I got involved in my community. Yeah. And there's times I sit there, it's like, I can't believe it's hard to believe I'm in a community and like I'm going to see some of these kids graduate.
Absolutely.
And when they have a wedding, I might be at their wedding, and as one of those guests, and those things you see in TV or places, and you never thought you're going to be part of because of your lifestyle. Yeah. And I'm going to be part of that. And it's weird.
And you saw that in the regiment when a guy came in, and all of a sudden he's a team leader, a platoon sergeant. You've seen that growth. You have the same thing on the outside. You just have to be intentional about making your community. And the last one here, if you could go back to Private Garcia, right, in the pre 9/11, what would you change, or what piece of advice would you give him to do different for the entirety of your career?
Take more pictures. Because I was always a security dude. I was the security Nazi. It's like, put the cameras away. You can't do this. OPSEC. But now I got nothing to look back on.
Right. There's a saying. Somebody told me, it was a sergeant major. I think I was an RI maybe. He said, when this is all over, the only thing you're going to have is the stuff hanging on your walls. Yeah. That's it. So, that's
and good. So I didn't do that. And learn more. Yeah. It took me way too long to learn how to be an effective leader towards the end of my career because I started educating myself on stuff outside of the uniform. Yeah. The stuff like emotional intelligence, the stuff they're not teaching you in the FMs and the books. Yeah. The stuff like empathy. Learning from educators and guys like Simon Sinek and Malcolm Gladwell, those educators out there and those psychologists, and they have organizational psychology experience that applies those principles to the military. We just were too stubborn, or I was too dumb to even realize until later on in life. Yeah,
I like what you said about take more pictures, because there's 2 buckets there. There's a guy that does too much, right? And then there's a guy that doesn't do anything, doesn't have anything to hold on to. But you're absolutely right on there. You got to remember the 75th and where you came from, because it's such a big part of our lives. And to look back on that stuff is amazing. But Lee, thanks for taking the time today. Absolutely. I know you got to get back over there and make people big and strong and fast, and have the Waverly Hall Yellow Jackets continue to beat my team over there on the other side of the county.
Always will.
Yeah. So appreciate it. It's great. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. Yeah. Appreciate it.